Hey guys, we've been getting asked a lot recently about two subjects. One is what's happening in Japan about COVID and vaccinations and so on, and the other one is about the Olympics. What's going to happen with the Olympics, or what do you think about the Olympics, or related Olympics related questions? So we're going to try and cover both of those briefly. So first thing is some statistics on what's happening with COVID. 128 million people in Japan. 529,000 have tested positive for COVID over the last however many months that's been, 14, 16 months, and there's been 9,638 deaths. Over the last couple of weeks, the numbers have been peaking, particularly in Osaka. Osaka's had some record numbers of people testing positive. Over 1,000 people a day have been testing positive for COVID in Osaka. Some of those numbers, it's always hard to tell with these numbers, isn't it? Some of those numbers obviously can be influenced by the fact that there's a lot more PCR testing going on. But it's just been this cycle. The last year, what we've seen is just a cycle. The Japanese government has had a cycle of saying, okay, it's all good. Some of you will remember they had the Go to Travel campaign and the Go to Eat campaign. Hey, everybody go traveling, everybody go eating, everybody go to restaurants. And then obviously after that there was a huge number of new cases. So they went, oh no, bad idea. Forget about the traveling and the eating. Don't do that. Stay home, stay home. And then the cases went down, and then they said, oh, it's not so bad now, you can go out again. And then the cases went up, and they declare states of emergency around different prefectures, and then the cases go down, and then they take the state of emergency off and the cases go up. It's sort of frustrating. It's been really frustrating to watch the way that they've dealt with it. I mean, we thought the first few months, the beginning of last year, the first few months of the COVID thing around the world, we thought the Japanese government were doing reasonably well. But the problem has been, and those of you who've watched our videos for a while will recognise, the faffing and the indecisiveness and the too much talking. All these stories that we hear on the news and in the newspaper and on the internet, and it's always things like, the Japanese government is considering. Japanese government is talking about considering. The Japanese government is considering talking about, talking about. And other words that have the same meaning. A lot of the things that we see in the media are words that have similar meaning to discussing, talking about, or considering, thinking about, and there's been a lot of that the last 12 months. Way too much of that. And everything's happened too slowly. They've always seemed to be behind the game, because by the time they finish having their 20 meetings and all these old guys sitting around tables talking about stuff, by the time they get around to making a decision, they're always too late. So it was the same as with the vaccine. It was supposed to start in March. It didn't start in March, and then it's starting now. It's starting now. Here we are, almost the end of April, and they've started to give it to the vaccine to healthcare workers and to people over 75 years old. And then recently they said that we should have enough vaccine for everybody by September, right? So it's just going on and on. So just before I go any further too, I know these videos are extremely unpopular. Some people just don't want to talk about this particular topic. Other people think that the whole COVID thing is all a hoax, and it's not real, and it's a conspiracy by all the medical people around the world, and we shouldn't be taking it so seriously. Other people think it's much more serious than we're being told, and it's a conspiracy to not tell us how serious it is, and that we don't take it seriously enough. So we know both the people in those two ways of thinking don't like these videos, and other people just don't like talking about subjects like this because it's depressing or whatever. But we have to cover everything, and because we get asked about this all the time, we have to cover it. So having said that, yeah, they reckon that we'll have enough doses of vaccine for everybody by September, which will be about the time that the Olympics is due to finish. So it's just a joke. It's just a joke. It just seems absolutely insane that they're still pretending it's going to happen. So some of you will be aware already that the Olympic flame's being trotted around Japan at the moment through every prefecture, And so every night on the news we see, the Olympic flame getting run through some little town outside, out in the bush somewhere, out in the countryside somewhere, or through the city or wherever they happen to be. And this whole getting ready for the Olympics thing, and it just seems like such a joke. It seems inevitable that either the IOC will cancel it, or it's really unlikely Japan will cancel it, because they've got this Gambaru attitude that no matter how logical it would seem to cancel it, they probably won't. North Korea pulled out recently and said they weren't coming. We wouldn't be surprised if lots of other countries start pulling out as well, which would then mean it would make it irrelevant, wouldn't it? Because if not everybody attends, it's not really the Olympics, is it? And winning a medal, I mean, you got to feel for the athletes who've been preparing, but winning a medal under the circumstances that not everybody came wouldn't have as much meaning, would it? So we said in a video 6 months ago, 8 months ago, last year, that it would seem wiser just to forget about it, forget about the Olympics till 2024, which is when the next Olympics is scheduled, and hold the 2024 Olympics in Tokyo, and then wherever it's supposed to be held in 2024, whatever country that's supposed to be, hold it in their country in 2028, would seem the most logical solution, because this postponing it thing and delaying it thing just doesn't seem to be a logical thing to do. On the one hand, the Japanese government's pretending like they're still going to have the Olympics. They still might, but it would be insane, wouldn't it? Where most of Japan hasn't been vaccinated and won't be. The Olympics is what, July, isn't it? July, August, and most of Japan won't be vaccinated then. And then when you look at the other countries around the world, I mean, America's doing pretty well. They've got half their people vaccinated, and then, but you look at Europe and everybody else, there's a lot of countries that just aren't even close. So it just seems insane during a pandemic to get people to come from all around the world into one small area and hang out for a couple of months and then all go back to their countries. Just seems like a recipe for disaster, doesn't it? Seems like an insane thing to do. So who knows? I mean, it's just frustrating, isn't it? Some of you guys would be feeling frustration too, because just as little people, there's nothing we can do, about the incompetence or otherwise of the people who make the decisions above us, and we just have to live with it, don't we? So yes. What else did we put down here? Oh yeah. So they've still got. They're doing this never-ending cycle of state of emergency thing, which sort of a has no teeth thing. It's more of just sort of increases awareness. Like recently they've had this weird thing where they get the restaurants to close by 9 o'clock. So most of the restaurants have last order at 8:30 and then they close at 9 o'clock. And the only result of that we've seen, it doesn't seem to stop people going to restaurants. It just means that the restaurants are much busier during that shorter period of time that they're open, right? Which just seems to be a ridiculous thing to do. It would seem to make more sense to let them stay open longer and spread out the time that is available for people to go and eat their dinner, and then you'd have less people in the place at the same time, wouldn't you? So by having last order at 8:30 and closing the restaurant at 9 o'clock, it just means that all the restaurants are much busier. So when we're driving around at night, we're seeing all the people, packing into the restaurants, which seems to be not what you want to have happen, is it? There's just some really irrational, illogical, ridiculous stuff like that. Are you sensing the frustration? It's just frustrating. It's just really frustrating. So what happens is, when they declare a state of emergency here, they don't make any rules. So since the start of all this, beginning of last year, they haven't brought in any laws at all to force people to do anything. All they do is ask people. They do an onagai thing. Onagai shimasu. Please do us a favour. We're calling on the restaurant owners to please do us a favour and please, close at 9 o'clock. And we're asking people to please, don't go out unless you need to, and that sort of stuff. And that's what the state of emergency is. It's sort of more of awareness. Every time they declare a state of emergency, suddenly we can't go to work because half our work disappears, because the people that we talk to or the people we do work with, every time a state of emergency is declared, they go, state of emergency, we can't go anywhere, we can't do anything, and everything stops, right? So our income stops. And then the state of emergency is lifted, and then we go back to working again, and then the state of emergency is back on again, and then we can't work again. And so all it's really doing is just creating uncertainty and this never-ending cycle of up and down with the number of cases, you know. So it's frustrating. It's frustrating because if they pulled their fingers out at the beginning of the year and ordered as much vaccine as they could and got it out to the people, you know, we could have had half the people vaccinated. Now, America's managed to do it this year. You know, there's no reason that we couldn't have. You know, it's just frustrating. It's just really, really frustrating. You know, and there's nothing we can do about it. So thank goodness for you guys. As far as we're concerned, you know, we just had our tax end of the year tax thing happen, so we got a whole bunch of tax bills and a whole bunch of other bills, and you know, we got a heavy corkboard loaded with bills. If it wasn't for our friends on Patreon and PayPal that have been supporting us, you know, we're in trouble. But if it wasn't for those guys that are supporting us, we'd be really in deep trouble by now. No idea how we would have got by or how we'd be getting by. So as it is, you know, there's a lot of people in a similar situation, isn't there? You know, so it's frustrating. So, but that's about all we got for you guys. Look, as far as, you know, as far as the Olympics, it just seems insane. It might happen. It just seems like the Japanese way of thinking is they can't say we won't do it because it sort of goes against the Japanese gambare thing. So, and just from a business point of view as well, you know, they've got that pressure on to do it from a business point of view. But so it really requires the International Olympic Committee to pull the pin on it, or individual countries to start pulling out, which just seems inevitable. It just seems, you know, here we are now, it's April, you know, it just seems inevitable that they, you know, that they do it. But it might go ahead. It might go ahead, you know. We're regularly wrong about our predictions about things like this, so it's well possible it could go ahead. But it just seems insane, doesn't it? It just doesn't seem to be the smart thing to do during the pandemic. So as I'm saying this, I know the stuff, you know, we spend too much time on the internet, so we know all the different ways of thinking about this. You know, every time we mention vaccines, we know there's a whole bunch of people out there that thinks that vaccines are a big conspiracy theory, and that 2% of the world dying isn't a bad thing. It's, you know, we've seen that argument a lot. People saying, oh, there's only 2% fatality rate, so you know it's no big deal. 2% of the world is how many billion people that they're waving off? Doesn't matter if those. In Japan's case, it'd be 2.7 million people. No, hang on, 1.2 million people. If 2% of the population died, would be 1.2 million people just in Japan alone. But there's some people that just wave that off. Oh, 2% of the population dying isn't a big thing, and it's all fake, and it's all a trick, and, you know, don't take the vaccine and all that sort of stuff. But the whole thing's frustrating, isn't it? I mean, we're not the only people that are sick of it. There's obviously a lot of you guys will be watching this that will be sick of hearing about it as well, you know, and different people with different opinions on it all as well. It'd be nice just to get it all over with so we don't have to hear about it anymore, wouldn't it? So, but yeah, the point of this video was, yeah, we're getting asked every day. Someone's sending us a message and saying what's happening with COVID in Japan. I heard that there's a big increase, and yeah, there is more than 1,000 a day just in Osaka. Tokyo's up around the 500 or 600 a day every day. There's a lot of people out there just going out about, they've sort of got sick of hearing about it, I think, and they're all just going about their business, you know, not worrying about it, because that means the cases have gone up too. And then the Olympic thing, you know, it's sort of strange to see on the news at night, you know, one minute they're talking about COVID and these record number of cases, and the next minute they're showing us the Olympic torch, and here we are getting ready for the Olympics. It just seems, how can you have both those two stories within 2 minutes of each other and not think it's not a good idea? You know, seems illogical, doesn't it? So anyway, tried to stay positive. The idea was to come to this nice place with those nice ducks. There's actually a lot of baby ducks in here at the moment too, because it's spring. You know, we've got frogs in the rice fields here behind you, and baby ducks and birds making nests, and you know, at the old farmhouse there's birds building nests and getting ready to lay eggs. One of the pigeons is looking a bit fatter than normal. So there's a lot of beautiful spring stuff going on. We've been showing you the pictures of the flowers on Patreon, you know, the the flowers that we see every day. And you know, there's a lot of beauty and a lot of good stuff going on at the moment. There really is. So I wanted to try and have a positive slant on this story, but it's a bit difficult, isn't it? You know, the frustration snuck in, didn't it? So anyway, I might just leave you to have a look at this, enjoy this scene for a while, calm down and forget about the other nonsense. So that was the update anyway. Please enjoy the scenery. More videos coming soon.